welcome to the Andy Rosado Show. This is where we bring you love and relationships, health, and everything else. Today we're going to be speaking on the great Marcus Garvey. The great Marcus Garvey. Yes. I also have a guest speaker today I'm going to have today. Y'all stay tuned. Great Marcus Garvey. Born in Jamaica, 1887. St. Anne. Had a father and mom's. Pops was a stonemason. Mom's was a house servant for the Caucasian. He was born one of the 11 children born into the couple, but only Marcus and another sibling lived on to adulthood. He attended school in Jamaica until 14. Then left his hometown St. Anne's to Kingston, Jamaica. There he became an apprentice in a print shop. And it's so important to have somebody to put the truth out in these newspapers. Newspapers really big at that time. Around the late 1800s, there was no cell phones. There was no TV back then. Couldn't watch TV to get the news. You had to get it through newspapers. In Jamaica, that's when Marcus Garvey experienced his first racism. In grade school, mostly all by white teachers. He became involved in the labor union for print tradesmen in Kingston. That's what jump-started his activism later in life. Marcus Garvey had family in Central America. He spent time over there before going to London. Spent time in Costa Rica and Panama. Then lived in London in 1912 and attended the University of London's Birkbeck College, where he studied law and philosophy. It's from there where he worked for the Pan-African newspaper. That's when he led debates as a speaker corner. We're going to continue this talk with Marcus Garvey. The FBI was created because of Marcus Garvey. But we're going to get on with the discussion. We're going to get on. I have a guest speaker today by the name of Brother Abdul Muhammad. Brother Abdul Muhammad, hello to you.
Yes, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Good to have you here, man, for real.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Now, I know we're talking about Marcus Garvey right now, but Marcus Garvey, coming into the early 1900s, he already had experienced this so much before coming to the United States. Because right after London, that's when he came into the United States. Mm-hmm. And already, like I said, he was already involved in speaking debates and wanted to share his his plan, his ideology to the United States. He tried to do it to his country, but I don't think he didn't want to go and do it in his country. And it was really strict over there also in Jamaica at that time. So and he felt that the United States, as far as any big nation in his world, needed awakening for the black people, So he came to the United States to do it. Now, there's so many things that I look back from back then that kind of relates to what's going on today.
Right.
There was one speech that he made, and the speech was in 1921. 1921 at Liberty Hall in New York City, and he was speaking on unemployment, and it goes like this. It goes, some do not see it and do not appreciate the fact that those who saw it and warned the people against us. The attitude of the employers in this country was to pay the Negro as small a wage as possible, on which he could hardly subsist or hardly live, because he desired to keep the Negro as an industrial pawn, as an industrial serf, and make it impossible for him to rise in the great industrial economic ladder of life. The Negro is worth more than $20, $30, or $40 a month. Yet, that was all that was paid to us prior to the war. Now, this war that he's talking about, I believe it was the First World War that we had, World War I, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And it was paid to the elevator man, to the porter man, and everybody nearly got the maximum of $40 or $50 or $60 a month from his employer prior to the war. Not because we were not worth more than that for our labor, but because the other man was prejudiced against paying us more than that. He desired not to give us a chance to rise in the industrial economic world. But the war came. The World War came. And we compelled him by conditions. We forced him by conditions to pay us $100 a week, to pay us $50 a week, to pay us $60 a week. And some of us mechanics forced him to pay us $200 a week. And he paid it, but with a bitter anguish. He paid it with great relentlessness. He paid it with a vengeance. And he said, I was going to get even with the Negro. He knew the Negro better than the Negro knew himself. He knew the Negro would spend every dollar, every nickel, every penny he earned, which he was compelled to pay him. He laid the plan by which the Negro would spend every nickel, but the Negro hadn't had sense sufficient to see it, to know it. Now was the object and purpose. What was the object and purpose? To take back every nickel that he paid him. Then he raised the cost of living. Okay? This was the World War that was going on, and Marcus Garvey at this time, during the World War, a lot of the white soldiers had left off to fight, and that left a lot of jobs open on the north side, which was, according to that time, was like the industrial boom. So these a lot of it was like a black flight. You know, they left from the south to come up to the north to work. And during this time, Marcus Garvey was fighting for the wages of the people, and was warning them that after the war, these white soldiers were coming back to their jobs. And Marcus Garvey warned the black workers that, okay, you're getting this high wage that you never had before.
Mm-hmm.
You see, these people, I think it jumped up for these people were getting like no more than $10 to $20 a week, and
Mm-hmm.
now to have them to get paid $100 a week, that's a big jump, big jump. These people went crazy, they, and Marcus Garvey already knew. So he warned them. He was like, "Oh, listen, y'all need to save every nickel, every dime, every penny that y'all make now." Okay, because this thing is not going to last long. These white soldiers are going to come back and get their jobs back. Okay, so save up every money that you never had before. Okay, save that thing. All right,
Right.
so we can invest that thing together. Because Marcus Garvey, he always had an economic plan for us at that time.
Right.
So I'm going to continue here with his speech.
Mm-hmm.
So he raised the price of everything. Okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
the people. This is after the war. This is when the soldiers came back to their jobs. Okay, they raised the price of the people. Meaning this was their personal inflation that they had over the black people, where they raised everything around us,
Mm-hmm.
everything. He raised the price of luxuries, for he knew well that above all other people, Negroes love luxuries.
Mm-hmm.
And he taxed us in districts where Negroes lived. For you pay more for the luxuries you received in your district than the white folks paid for the same luxury in their district.
Right.
The white people planned to get every nickel that they paid to you, and we fell for it. We bought silk shirts at $10 a piece. We bought or $15 a piece. We bought shoes $30 to $25 a pair. We bought ladies' dresses at $100 a suit. Now listen to me now. This we talking about the early 1900s, man. We talking 1919, 1913, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And these people at those times for a whole suit, okay, was $100. That's a lot of money then. Yeah.
Okay.
We talking that's some inflation, man. I'm just like just boggled by that. Because man, I mean today that would be like $100, $500 suits,
Mm-hmm.
$800,000 suit. I don't know what's going on. But I
Right.
could get me $100 just to continue his quote. So we bought the most expensive hats,
Mm-hmm.
silk socks at $3 a pair, $2 a pair. Now this is like $20 or $40, now money, but and $150 a pair. Okay,
Right.
and we took automobile rides. Okay,
Yeah.
and we paid $24 for a Sunday afternoon ride. And we did all kinds of things and all sort. Some of us had 6 girls and gave gave presents to each of them.
Right.
Thus, we spent every nickel
Mm.
of what we received. Now, this thing, it seemed like an issue of today, but
Mm.
tell me what you think about Marcus Garvey of then, when it pertains to economic advancement of any kind. Just talk to me about that, because he was real serious about the economic development of, more sense, black people in specific. That's
Yes, sir.
all he really concentrated on. There was no mixing in with no other type of groups.
Right.
This is just for black economic development.
Yes, sir. Well, Marcus Garvey is in today's time, he's been shrouded in the great upliftment of our people. And his work and history is etched in stone. In terms of economic development, Marcus Garvey was among the great race leaders that actually they debated and they went back and forth on this particular subject in terms of the upliftment. At that time, the language that was used was Negro. We know Black people, African, what have you today. But in terms of economic development and the program of economic development, Marcus Garvey, I believe, saw and spoke out to remedy the issue that was the residue of our enslavement and what continued on through segregation, from slavery, through Jim Crow or what have you. Booker T. Washington came. They tried to say it on the opposite side of Garvey, and of course, Garvey. They were in unison to a particular degree.
Yeah, Booker T. Washington, African leader,
yes,
author, activist.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course we had the early 1900s when especially 1919, you had the Niagara movement and the Talented Tenth, who many people don't realize is being used by major liberal Jewish groups in order to keep Black people in what is called non-economic liberalism. That's why they really feared Marcus Garvey. It wasn't just what Marcus Garvey was saying. It was the idea of unifying Black people for economic purposes that would help uplift our people. And the Jews saw that as a direct threat to them. And that was in the making of what is called the Talented Tenth, or the civil rights movement, which the precursor to it, of course, was the NAACP, which was started by Kiwi Kaplan and Joel Spingarn, who were spies for the FBI government and U.S. government. And they saw Marcus Garvey essentially as a direct threat, because Garvey was talking about improving and showing self-development, economic development, and the unification and strengthening of Black people. Whereas the strategy of the so-called European whites that were behind the NAACP in the founding of it was to buffalo Black people into non-economic liberalism. And that's what's the problem with us today. A lot of Black groups, or so-called groups that have talking white heads, are speaking about rights in terms of, we can sit on the front of the bus, we can drink out of a water fountain, we can go to this school, but we don't have a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out. We don't have any economic development. So Garvey sought to empower and show us the direction, particularly in our unity. And he made another very interesting statement that bears on what you just said earlier, was that Garvey had said in terms of Africa, and that relates to us here because we are Africans in a broader diaspora. We are descendants of those in this broader context. He also said that if Rothschild and the Rhodes can mine the wealth, and the Carnegies and the steel magnates can mine wealth out of Africa, the diamonds, gold, and the steel, then Marcus Garvey also said, then why can't the African do the same thing for himself? We can do the same exact thing. So that bears on us today.
Now,
yes, sir.
Now, I know you was talking about the Talented 10. Now, this is an organization, like a Jewish organization that.
Well, actually, the Talented 10th is the root of the Talented 10th, of course, is the Boule. It was those Negroes that were the ones that were the gatekeepers in terms of our progress. Okay. And they were the watchmen to look out for those such as Garvey and any other race leader that would come up to try to inflame the Black man and woman to self-determination, self-economic empowerment, or what have you.
These groups did exist at those times. These
yes,
groups
sir.
that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That was going against the advancements of Black people economically.
Yes.
They did exist. So I guess there was a power against Marcus Garvey's movement, because he wasn't a violent guy at all.
Right, absolutely.
Right? He wasn't a violent guy. He also speaks on how we characterize ourselves. You see, because I guess he came and saw that the black people were, just being thought of as being what they thought of themselves, as being
Mm-hmm.
nobody, being trash. I mean,
Right.
they had all these depictions of them of
Right.
as animals. They were already called animals,
Right. Right.
and these people, they didn't look at themselves very very well at that
Right.
time,
Right.
and so I mean Marcus Garvey would pull that out and be like,
Mm.
"Yo, y'all some beautiful people,
Right.
don't listen to what other people's telling you that you are. You're not that.
Right.
You're not that." So, but he speaks on this poem here. Well, it's not a poem. It's a speech that he did at New York City again in
Mm-hmm.
1922, but he speaks on the Chicago Defender that um, the Chicago Defender that has become my arch enemy
Mm-hmm.
in the newspaper field. Um, it's so because 1919, I started the Negro world
Mm-hmm.
to preserve the term Negro to the race as against the desperate desire of other newspapermen to substitute the term colored for
Mm-hmm.
the race. Nearly all the newspapers of the race had entered into a conspiracy to taboo the term
Mm-hmm.
Negro and popularize the term colored
Mm-hmm.
as the proper race term. To
Right.
argument this, they also fostered the propaganda of bleaching out black skins
Mm-hmm.
to light complexions and
Mm-hmm.
straightening out kinky or curly hair to meet the standards of the new society
Right.
that was being promoted. I severely criticized the Chicago Defender for
Mm-hmm.
publishing humiliating and vicious advertisements against the pride and integrity of the race. At that time, the Defender was publishing full-page advertisement about bleaching the skin
Mm-hmm.
and straightening the hair. One of these advertisements was from the Flog Manufacturing Company of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And there were many degrading extortions to the race to change its black complexion as entrained to society. There were pictures of two women, one black and the other very bright. And under the picture, the black woman appeared these words, "Lighten your skin." Now, this was being published out in newspapers. Like anybody could see this. Like
Yes.
public, anybody could see these messages of
Yes.
of what we needed to do
Mm-hmm.
as far as lightening our skin
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
um, and,
Movie industry had a lot to do with that at that time also.
and straighten their hair. Now
Right.
these leaders that you're talking about now like W.D. Du Bois. I mean, a lot of them were like lighter
Right.
skin, and they all had straight hair. They all straightened their hair,
Right.
and so it seems to me that W.D. Du Bois and all these organizations were formed. Somebody had to pay for these organizations,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and I believe this goes on a little later in 1900s. But the
Mm-hmm.
NAACP was formed by the Rockefeller Association and
Mm-hmm.
others to
Right.
come in for the NAACP. But that's another organization that we're talking
Right.
about. But the Chicago Defender, this is something that this was like a major newspaper in Chicago,
Yes.
and so he was looking to uplift people just by letting them know that we're some great people. We can do better
Mm.
than this.
Right. Right.
We can do better than this.
Right.
So I guess it had to start with really how you looked into yourself. How'd you look? Uh, how'd you perceived yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes, sir.
yeah. So it goes on. It goes on. The advertisement went on. Bleach your dark skin.
Right.
Take the black out of your face. If you
Right.
want to be in society, lighten your skin, have a light complexion, and be in society. Light skin beauty overnight.
Yes, sir. And it's
Amazing.
a root to that too. Unfortunately, the root of it, and you can go to look at a lot of the movie producers in the 1900s, particularly the Jewish movie producers who are actually the architects. When we talk about white supremacy and racism in terms of what Garvey was fighting against, the architects of it was a lot of the Jewish groups in particular. You know, you got Al Jolson with blackface mocking black people, and then you had the Jim Crow image, which later gave rise to the images that negatively portrayed black people. Bleaching creams and all this. You had particular
I did
Jewish
not know that.
newspapers that were mocking black people.
Wow.
Bleaching creams were becoming
Bleaching
popular in terms
creams.
of trying to
Wow.
inject in black people that blackness was a sin and blackness was ugly. And this, and Garvey was one of the race leaders that spoke out against that.
And this and something that's still going on today, brother.
Right.
I mean, you go to Jamaica, you go to India. I mean, these people is really bleaching out their skins out today. I mean, it's very, very popular, very, very
Yeah.
popular even today. It's just so interesting, to see that, to know that.
Well, when you colonize a people, the one thing they do in colonizing a people, they first colonize its God. They colonize the image of the God. Once you can colonize the image of the God, destroy that God, then the enemy, the white man, is able to substitute himself as that God. Then the work of trying to get the people to transform the people into that image becomes easier once you conquer the idea in the image of the God of that people. We see that even in South Africa, and particularly even today, down to this day, in many African nations, bleaching creams is a rage in Black Africa today.
For real. Look at it. Look at it. It is no wonder that now this Marcus Garvey. Now it is no wonder that W.D. Du Bois seeks the company of white people, because he hates black as being ugly. That is why he likes to dance with white people, and dine with them, and sometimes sleep with them. Because from his way of seeing things, all that is black is ugly. All that is white is beautiful. Yet this professor who sees ugliness in being black essays to be the leader of the Negro people and has been trying over 14 years to deceive them through his connection with the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. Now, what does he mean by advancing colored people? Now, he's talking about 14 years already. He's been trying to do this, man. Just trying to, and trying to tell him, yo, this is what you're not. This is the way you're supposed to talk. This is the way you're supposed to look, and you need some type of education, because at that time, Marcus Garvey then didn't. He didn't go to like the universities that W.D. Du Bois and other one went to.
Right.
They put it to where he really didn't have no education. They try to make Marcus Garvey out to be a bum, basically. And it went so far into they started talking about his shoes and everything when he was doing his speeches. They talking about his clothes and what he was wearing and stuff, like just joking around, just clowning,
The Negro psychological attack on the talented tenth and trying to make, the whole ideology of the talented tenth of the Boule was that they believed that only light-skinned, educated blacks could save black people. And that plays right into what you're saying about the attacks of W.E. Du Bois on Marcus Garvey. They believe that the gatekeepers believed that. They even had a brown, in certain parts of the South, in Louisiana, they had what is called a brown paper bag test. In order for you to get into some of their fraternities, you had to pass the brown bag test, which means if you were darker than a brown paper bag, if you're darker than it, or you were not lighter than that brown paper bag, or you were darker, than that brown paper bag, you could not get into some of their societies.
Right. This is crazy. Now I understand the father of Malcolm X
Mhm.
was the he followed Marcus Garvey. He was a Garveyite.
Yes, Earl Little was on, and his mother was on the fringe of the Garvey movement, and his father was a follower of Marcus Garvey. Preached at the UNI meetings and held the UNI meetings. In fact, that became the source of a lot of the trouble, in which eventually got him killed because of that, because of his preaching.
Right. Okay. 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 Then he established this Black Star Line.
Right.
Um, that he established this Star Line. I think about 1919 or
Right.
something, and it was it to bring black people to or connect them to Africa or some way, or he was going to use the ship
Right.
to export goods, and he also put it in the stock market where you could uh, buy a share of the company
Mhm.
and such like that.
Yes.
So he would yeah.
Hmm.
So he would raise a lot of money and stuff like that.
Right. And that's essentially what made him even more dangerous, because African, Garvey's ideology, as well as a lot of our race leaders in Africa, is for the Africans. And he saw us making that sojourn back to Africa. And, it's funny because, in a sense, is that the journey back to our African or our black selves is a twofold journey. Not just a physical migration, but there has to be a mental and spiritual migration as well, because at
Right.
one time, you can trace all civilization goes back to Africa. The cradle of civilization is there. So essentially, there's an African global presence everywhere, but we have to return
Right.
in essential sense, in self-independence and self-determination. Land is the most essential part of that whole equation, because there is no independence or self-determination without land itself. So that was very important. And of course, the enemy did what he did to derail his movement. Yeah, by 1913, by 1913, 1940, FBI founded and established. Even before you had the FBI, you had the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA in 1947. That came later, of course, but yeah, I think you always
Mm.
had some secret. You had secret intelligence always monitoring the movement of blacks, particularly enlightened ones that will come from out of the East or Africa or the Caribbean, that come here. And subsequently, there were other race leaders that were very important in terms of Jamaica. You had George Padmore,
So,
you had CLR James, and you had Edward Blyden as well as Marcus Garvey.